She found it sitting alone on a forgotten railway track, a broken, rusted train no one had touched for decades. The metal was eaten by time, the windows were shattered, and the smell of old oil and dust hung in the air. Everyone called it junk. But when the woman saw it, she didn't see a wreck. She saw a story waiting to be told. It started with a strange listing online. A few blurry photos. A short description that read, * old train carriage. Abandoned. Price, $1. * most people would scroll past it and laugh. Who would buy something like that? But for her, an architect with a love for forgotten spaces, that $1 felt like a challenge. What if there was something hidden inside? What if the train wasn't as empty as it looked? When she arrived to see it, the station caretaker chuckled. "You really want to buy this thing? It's just scrap metal," he said. The floor creaked under her feet as she stepped inside. Sunlight slipped through cracks in the roof, lighting up the dust in the air. Faded seats. Broken lamps. A door half hanging off its hinges. It looked like the kind of place people forgot existed. But her eyes didn't see decay. They saw design, potential, maybe even history. The deal was quick. One signature, one coin, and the old train was hers. People shook their heads, calling it a waste of time. But she couldn't explain why she felt drawn to it. Something about it felt unfinished, like it was holding on to a secret. That night, as she walked around the train again, her flashlight caught a strange reflection beneath a panel near the conductor's cabin. It didn't look like rust, it looked like metal, hidden deep behind the wall. She paused, heart pounding. What was it doing there? Why was it sealed so carefully? The $1 purchase suddenly felt like more than a project. It felt like the start of a mystery waiting to unfold. The next morning, she returned with gloves, a notebook, and a flashlight that cut through the darkness like a thin blade. The air inside the old train felt heavy, as if time itself hadn't moved since the last passenger stepped off decades ago. Rust coated every handle, dust clung to every wall, and cobwebs hung like curtains across the narrow walkway. The silence was thick, only the soft crunch of her boots echoed against the wooden floor. Every inch of the train told a story. She could almost hear the whispers of people who once sat here. Travelers, workers, maybe families on long journeys. There were torn tickets scattered in a corner, old newspapers from the 1970s, and even a small leather bag tucked under a seat, eaten away by mold. She picked it up gently, half expecting it to fall apart in her hands. Inside, she found nothing but a rusted key and a small tag that read * cabin 3. Her curiosity deepened. Why would someone lock something inside a cabin and leave the key behind? She moved toward the front section, where the conductor's cabin was located. The wooden door was swollen shut, but she forced it open with a firm push. Inside, broken switches lined the control panel. Dusty gauges pointed to nowhere. Yet the space felt different, more personal. There were faded photographs pinned near the window, too worn to recognize the faces, and a single coffee mug still sitting on the table as if the owner had planned to come back. She started sketching the layout in her notebook. As an architect, her mind naturally mapped out every angle, every section that could hide something. She noticed the floor near the panel she saw last night, the one that caught her flashlight, had uneven marks, like it had been opened before. She crouched down, tapping gently along the metal surface. A hollow sound answered back. Beneath the layer of grime, a rectangular outline appeared. Her hands trembled slightly as she began scraping off the dirt. The metal underneath was smoother, newer, untouched by rust. This wasn't part of the original construction. Someone had built it deliberately. But why? And what could be inside something sealed for decades in an abandoned train no one cared about? Outside, a storm began to roll in. The wind howled through the cracks of the old train, whistling like a distant warning. She stayed inside, kneeling beside the hidden panel, completely unaware of time passing. The caretaker had mentioned that the train had once been part of a government project, something about luxury travel that got cancelled after funding collapsed. Could this be connected? As the rain started to pour, she found herself tracing strange markings along the panel, faint numbers and letters etched into the metal. It looked like coordinates, but they didn't match anything familiar. Her heartbeat quickened. She took photos, wiped the surface clean, and noticed the faint symbol of a crest, a small emblem with wings and a crown. That wasn't something random. It looked official. She followed the line of the floor to where it met the wall. Another small section seemed off, just slightly thicker than the rest. She pressed her fingers along the edges until she felt a tiny gap, a hidden latch. She tried the old key from the bag. It didn't fit perfectly, but with a small twist, there was a click. The sound echoed in the empty carriage like a secret exhaling after years of silence. Behind the panel was darkness, a hollow space stretching deep under the conductor's cabin. She leaned closer, shining her flashlight into it. Something metallic glimmered faintly inside. She reached in, brushing away layers of dust, and pulled out a small box, heavy for its size. It was locked tight, its surface engraved with the same crest she saw earlier. Her mind raced with possibilities. It could be anything, a time capsule, government property, or even something left behind on purpose. The storm outside grew louder, shaking the train slightly, but she didn't move. She sat there, clutching the box, rain tapping above her like a drumbeat. She whispered to herself, half in disbelief, "What have I just found?" The wind roared in response, as if the entire train was holding its breath, waiting for her to open it. She placed the box on the old control desk, brushing off a thick layer of dust. The faint emblem on the lid, that winged crown, seemed to shimmer under the flicker of her flashlight. The lock was small but sturdy, the kind made decades ago when craftsmanship still meant something. Her fingers ran along the edges. It felt cold, solid, and unshakably important. Whatever was inside had been sealed away for a reason. She searched her backpack for tools, a small screwdriver, a chisel, anything that could help. Each time the metal scraped against the lock, it made a sharp, echoing sound that filled the carriage. The train creaked slightly in response, as if protesting the disturbance. She hesitated. A thought crossed her mind. Maybe she should stop. Maybe some things were meant to stay hidden. But curiosity pushed her forward. With one final twist, the lock gave in. The click was soft, almost too gentle for what it revealed. The box opened slowly, its hinges creaking after years of silence. Inside, layers of yellowed fabric wrapped around something rectangular. Her hand shook as she peeled the layers away. Beneath them lay a bundle of old documents, each marked with red seals and faded stamps. The papers were crisp yet fragile, like they had been protected from time itself. She lifted the first one. The words were typed, the ink still legible. At the top, it read, *confidential, Project Aurora. Her brows furrowed. She'd never heard of it before. The document detailed plans, measurements, and sketches, designs for something far more complex than a regular passenger train. The note spoke of advanced engineering, materials not commonly used at the time, and prototypes that were never meant to go public. She turned the pages faster now. Each document told a story of ambition and secrecy. There were signatures from officials, lists of components, even budget sheets that mentioned sums far beyond normal railway costs. One paper caught her eye. It described a secure chamber built into the main body of the train, designed to store sensitive experimental material. Her pulse quickened. That could mean anything: rare minerals, prototypes, even classified artifacts. At the bottom of the box lay something heavier, a small metallic object wrapped in cloth. She unwrapped it carefully. It looked like a component of some kind, about the size of her hand, made from an alloy she couldn't identify. It wasn't corroded, even after decades of being hidden away. She tapped it lightly. The metal produced a deep, resonant tone, unlike anything she'd ever heard. Her mind raced. Why would this be hidden inside an abandoned train sold for $1? And how did no one know about it? She quickly snapped photos, uploading them to her tablet for closer inspection later. But as she worked, something else caught her attention. At the bottom of the box, beneath the documents, there was a second layer. She pried it open and found an old, faded letter. The handwriting was elegant, written in dark blue ink. To whoever finds this, know that this project was more than it appeared. They told us it was about innovation, but there was something else, something bigger. Keep this safe, and never let it fall into the wrong hands. She froze. The paper trembled between her fingers. The words felt personal, urgent. Someone had hidden these things deliberately, maybe even risking their life to do it. The train wasn't just an abandoned piece of metal. It was a vault, a time capsule of a forgotten secret. The storm outside began to fade, leaving only the soft patter of rain. She sat in the dim glow of her flashlight, surrounded by relics of a story lost to history. Every sound, the hum of the wind, the creak of the metal, seemed to whisper reminders of what she had just uncovered. Her phone buzzed suddenly, breaking the silence. It was a message from a historian friend she'd sent the crest photo to earlier. It read, "That emblem belongs to a government research division from the 1950s. Are you sure that's where you found it?" Her heart skipped. She looked back at the open box, the strange metal object gleaming faintly, and the letter resting in her hand. A quiet realization washed over her. This was no coincidence. That $1 train wasn't abandoned by accident. It had been hidden, waiting for someone brave enough to open its secrets. She didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, the words from the letter echoed in her mind. Never let it fall into the wrong hands. It sounded like a warning, one written by someone who had seen too much. By sunrise, she had already packed her bag again, ready to return to the train. She needed answers. The sky was pale grey when she arrived. Dew covered the tracks, and the morning fog wrapped the train like a ghostly blanket. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was still heavy with the scent of rust and rain, but something about it felt different now. This wasn't just an old relic anymore. It was a piece of history, one that had been intentionally buried. She placed the metallic object on the table, right next to her notes and the letter. The faint emblem stared back at her, daring her to uncover more. The documents from the box mentioned compartments and secret chambers. If one panel hid that box, could there be others? She decided to find out. Moving through the narrow corridor, she started tapping along the walls and floors again. Each sound told a story, solid, hollow, uneven. Near the second cabin, her knuckles hit something that rang differently. She crouched down and pulled away a layer of loose boards. Beneath them was a metal door, smaller than the one before, locked with a thick rusted latch. She used a crowbar from her toolbox and forced it open. A rush of cold air escaped, smelling of oil and dust. Inside was a compartment barely large enough to crawl into. Her flashlight revealed rows of wooden crates stacked carefully against the wall. Her breath caught as she wiped off the dust. Faded symbols marked each crate, the same winged crown stamped on every lid. Her hand shook as she opened the first one. Inside were tubes, glass containers, and fragments of strange-looking metal parts. Each item was wrapped in cloth, labeled with faded writing that she could barely read. One of the tags said Prototype Core, Model 7. The others were marked with serial numbers, government initials, and testing dates that matched the era of Project Aurora. She realized this wasn't just an ordinary train. It was a mobile lab, a traveling research unit designed to carry experimental technology in secrecy. That explained the thick walls, the reinforced floors, and the hidden panels. It also explained why someone wanted it forgotten. Her flashlight flickered, and for a second, the silence felt heavier. She tried another crate, this one smaller and more secure. Inside was a glass capsule, sealed with a metal band. A small note sat beside it, barely legible, unstable. Handle with care. Her pulse quickened. She placed it back gently, unsure what she was even holding. She took pictures of everything, the crates, the symbols, the documents. Her mind buzzed with possibilities. Could this be a secret Cold War project? Or something meant for commercial innovation that was shut down before it began? She didn't know, but she understood one thing. What she had found could change how people saw this forgotten era. Suddenly, a creak echoed from behind her. The sound of metal shifting. She froze. Someone was outside. Through a small gap in the door, she saw a silhouette moving along the track. It wasn't the caretaker. The figure paused near the end of the train, then disappeared into the fog. Her heart pounded. She quietly closed the compartment and stepped back, her hands trembling. Whoever that was, they knew about the train. Or maybe they had been watching her. The thought sent a chill down her spine. She locked the door from the inside and backed away slowly. Her mind raced as she packed her findings. Every discovery came with a shadow of danger now. This wasn't just about architecture or restoration anymore. It was about uncovering a secret that someone, somewhere, might not want found. As she stepped off the train, the fog had thickened. The track stretched endlessly in both directions, disappearing into the mist. She could still feel the weight of the metallic object in her bag, pulsing with silent importance. For the first time, she understood why that train had been sold for $1. It wasn't a sale. It was a way to make it disappear. She looked back one last time at the rusted carriage, its windows glinting faintly in the grey light. Somewhere deep inside that metal shell, history was still breathing, and now, It had finally been disturbed. The next day, she woke up with a strange mix of excitement and unease. Her mind was still replaying the shadow she saw moving outside the train. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone knew. Maybe someone who had been waiting for years, watching from a distance, waiting for that train to resurface. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how deep this mystery could go. But she also knew one thing: she couldn't stop now. She packed her bag again, this time more carefully. Gloves, camera, notebook, and a small recorder. She needed evidence, something solid that couldn't just disappear if someone decided this story should stay buried. When she reached the train yard, the air was cold and quiet. The caretaker wasn't around. The only sound was the wind brushing against the metal frames of other forgotten trains. She stepped inside her train, locking the door behind her. The smell of rust and damp air welcomed her again. Everything was just as she had left it: the open crates, the scattered papers, the mysterious metallic object still sitting on the desk. She switched on the recorder and began to speak softly, describing every detail. Each word echoed through the empty cabin. As she spoke, she noticed something she hadn't before. Near the back of the compartment, one of the walls had faint lines, thin cracks forming a perfect rectangle. It didn't look like damage. It looked like another door. Her pulse quickened. She grabbed her flashlight and tapped along the edges. Hollow. She pressed gently. A hidden panel clicked open with a soft metallic pop. Behind it was a narrow tunnel-like space running between the walls. She crawled inside, careful not to disturb the debris. The air inside was cold and dry. Her light revealed rows of rolled-up blueprints stored in tubes, dozens of them. She pulled one out and unrolled it. Her eyes widened. It wasn't just the design for a train. It was a blueprint for something much bigger. Complex machinery, connected lines, energy channels, and at the center, the same crest, the winged crown. The title block at the bottom read, Asterisk Prototype Transport Vessel, Phase 2. Asterisk. Her heart pounded. The train she bought for $1 wasn't just a research site. It was part of a larger project that had never been finished. Maybe it wasn't even meant for public transport at all. Maybe it was something more advanced, something ahead of its time. She pulled another blueprint. This one showed underground tunnels, possible routes, secret storage depots. Everything about it screamed secrecy. The date at the corner read 1956. She took photos of each sheet, trying to capture every line before rolling them back up. But as she reached for another, she noticed something wedged behind the tubes, a small leather journal. The pages inside were filled with neat handwriting. Notes, diagrams, personal entries. One line stood out immediately. Asterisk. They've decided to shut it down. Too risky. The energy output is unstable. They'll hide everything in the trains. I don't think the public will ever know. Asterisk. She froze. This wasn't just a forgotten experiment. It was something that could have changed history, and someone had buried it under the disguise of a rusted, abandoned train. Her breath grew shallow as she turned the pages, each one revealing more details: names of scientists, meeting dates, code phrases, and coordinates that led to other sites. The sound of footsteps broke the silence. She looked up, heart hammering. Someone was outside again. The steps were heavier this time, closer, deliberate. She quickly stuffed the journal into her bag, switched off her flashlight, and crouched low inside the hidden compartment. Through the crack in the wall, she saw light beams sweeping across the cabin. A voice murmured something she couldn't hear clearly. Deep, calm, searching. After a few tense seconds, the light faded. The footsteps moved away, slow and careful. She waited, barely breathing, until the sound disappeared completely. Her palms were slick with sweat, her pulse racing. Whoever that was, they weren't a random wanderer. They were looking for something, maybe the same thing she had found. She crawled out quietly, locking the panel behind her. The train felt heavier now, filled with secrets pressing against the walls. She stood still for a long moment, staring at the metallic box on the desk and the empty space where the crates once stood. One of them was missing. Someone had taken it. The realization hit her hard. This mystery wasn't over. It had just woken up. The train, the blueprints, the journal, they were pieces of a story far bigger than she had imagined. And somewhere, out there, someone else was still guarding its truth.